Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to be diving deep into Abbott Laboratories
Right.
and really trying to figure out, um, is this stock, a good fit for your portfolio or not?
Definitely something a lot of people are wondering, I'm sure.
Yeah. And we're going to be pulling from a bunch of different sources, trying to get, a really good picture of this company.
Sounds good.
So we'll be looking at their financials, their market share, all the innovations they've been coming out with,
Right.
how their valuation looks right now, some of the big acquisitions they've made,
Mm-hmm.
what their services business is looking like,
Okay.
their dividend policy and share buybacks, a little bit of their history,
Yeah.
and then any ESG factors that we should be aware of.
Wow. That's quite the comprehensive list.
Yeah, we're going to try to hit all the high points.
Yeah. We're gonna try to hit all the high points.
Well, let's kick things off with a bit of a history lesson then, shall we? Abbott Laboratories has been around for quite some time,
Oh yeah.
dating all the way back to 1888.
Oh.
Founded by a Chicago physician, a guy named Wallace Calvin Abbott. That's impressive. I mean,
Huh.
talk about longevity, right?
Absolutely.
So they started out, focusing on these alkaloid-based medicines, but they've obviously grown quite a bit since then.
Oh yeah, they've evolved into a global healthcare powerhouse these days. They've got their hands in everything from nutrition to diagnostics, medical devices, pharmaceuticals, you name it.
That sounds like it.
And their financials tell a pretty compelling story, too. In 2021, they reported earnings of $7.071 billion,
Right.
with annual revenue reaching a whopping $43.075 billion.
Billion with a B.
That's right. And that's not all that represents a significant jump, a 24.5% growth from the previous year.
Whoa. Okay, so at least on the surface, it sounds like things are, moving in the right direction.
Yeah, they seem to be firing on all cylinders.
But to really get a good sense of their financial health, we should probably dig a little deeper.
For sure.
How do those numbers stack up against their competition?
Right.
And what's actually fueling that growth?
Yeah, exactly. Because while the overall figures look pretty impressive, we need to understand, what's driving those results.
Right.
Is it sustainable? For example, their diagnostics business, specifically the rapid COVID-19 tests, those played a huge role in boosting their revenue recently.
Yeah, for sure. Everybody needed those.
Exactly. But now the question is, can they keep that momentum going, or was that just a temporary bump?
Okay. Yeah, that's a really good point. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about their innovation pipeline.
Okay.
Abbott Laboratories is well known for having a really productive pipeline, especially when it comes to medical devices.
Absolutely.
And just recently, they've had some big FDA approvals for some really interesting treatments,
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it.
like TriClip. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, it's a minimally invasive treatment for tricuspid regurgitation.
Exactly. And then there's this new blood test that can actually detect traumatic brain injuries.
It's amazing what they're coming up with these days.
It really is. And it really shows, their commitment to innovation
For sure.
and how they're always looking for ways to, address those unmet medical needs out there.
Absolutely. And the TriClip in particular, that's targeting a market that could potentially be worth billions of dollars.
Wow.
But they're not alone in that space. They're facing some stiff competition from Edwards Life Sciences.
Oh, right. Right. I've heard of them.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, definitely. Because that competition is just something you see all the time in the medical device world.
All the time, it's a constant race to innovate.
Exactly. And speaking of pushing boundaries, Abbott's also making a play in the pulsed field ablation market with their Volt system,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
which puts them head-to-head with some big names like Medtronic and Boston Scientific.
Yeah, those guys are already pretty established in the U.S. market.
Right, exactly. So I'm curious to hear, what you think about this pulsed field ablation thing.
Sure. So it's basically a new way to treat atrial fibrillation.
And atrial fibrillation, that's like an irregular heartbeat.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a really common heart rhythm disorder. And Abbott's entry into this market is a pretty clear sign that they're looking for ways to expand into these new areas with a lot of potential.
Yeah, it makes sense they want to get a piece of that pie.
For sure.
So let's talk about acquisitions for a second.
Okay.
Because Abbott's done a lot of acquiring over the years and has played a huge role in their growth.
No doubt.
I mean, just to name a few,
Yeah.
there's St. Jude Medical back in 2017 for a cool $25 billion.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Then there's Alair in 2016 for $5.8 billion.
Yeah.
And more recently, they picked up Sophia Valve Technologies and Walk Vascular.
Right.
So, I mean, it seems like they're really trying to position themselves for long-term growth by getting into these new markets and strengthening their existing presence.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the St. Jude Medical acquisition, for example, that really beefed up their cardiovascular device portfolio,
Okay.
gave them a much stronger foothold in the market for things like heart valves, pacemakers, all those implantable devices.
see.
And then you've got the Alair acquisition, which really boosted their diagnostics capabilities, particularly in point-of-care testing.
Right, that's a huge market.
It is. So when you look at these acquisitions strategically, you can really see how they're trying to piece together a dominant position in the healthcare space.
Yeah, it's like they're building this, healthcare empire.
Exactly.
And speaking of market presence, I mean, Abbott Laboratories is a force to be reckoned with, especially in the world of diagnostics.
Oh, yeah. They're a leader for sure.
They hold the top spot in the $7 billion point-of-care diagnostics segment,
Wow.
which is part of that even bigger $50 billion in vitro diagnostics market.
That's a lot of diagnostics.
That's a lot of tests.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that kind of market leadership, that's got to be a huge advantage for them.
Oh, absolutely. It gives them a leg up on the competition and a really steady stream of revenue. But, it's a fast-moving industry,
Right.
so we have to consider the possibility of disruption, too.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that's true. So before we move on, let's touch on Abbott's services business for a minute. When they bought Alair, they also got Arriva Medical, which was the biggest mail-order diabetic supplier out there.
Right. I remember that.
But then they decided to close that business down.
They did, which was a bit of a head-scratcher for some people.
Yeah. I mean, what do you make of that decision?
Well, it seems like they were making a strategic move away from that specific market segment, maybe because of profitability concerns or some regulatory hurdles.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I think when we analyze these kinds of decisions, it helps us understand how their overall business model is evolving.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So it looks like they're shifting their focus towards areas with more potential for growth and stronger competitive advantages.
Makes sense. All right, so let's move on and talk about Abbott's valuation.
Sounds good. So, according to TipRanks, their analysis as of December 17th, 2024, the average 12-month price target for Abbott stock, that's ABT,
Yeah.
is $133.06.
So that's like a potential 17.48% increase from where it's sitting right now at $113.26.
That's right.
And they also have a strong buy consensus rating.
Yeah.
So what does that tell us? I mean, for investors looking at this stock, what are the potential, risks and rewards?
Well, a strong buy rating, that basically means most of the analysts who cover Abbott stock, they think it's going to do better than the overall market.
Okay.
In the coming months, at least that's their prediction. But of course, we have to remember these price targets. They're just projections,
They're not guarantees.
Right, it's not a crystal ball. The actual stock price could end up going in a completely different direction.
Absolutely. So important to keep that in mind and, look at everything before making any decisions.
Always.
All right, so let's move on to something that's really important for those income-seeking investors out there.
Okay.
Abbott's dividend policy and their share buybacks.
Right.
So Abbott is actually considered one of those S&P 500 dividend aristocrats,
Oh, wow.
which means they've been consistently paying out dividends for at least 25 years in a row.
That's impressive.
It is. And that kind of consistency that really signals, financial strength
Right.
and a commitment to giving back to their shareholders.
Absolutely.
So I think it'd be helpful to look at their dividend yield and their payout ratio
Yeah.
to see how sustainable those payouts actually are.
That's a good point because you want to make sure they can keep it up, right?
Exactly. And then there's the whole share buyback thing.
Right.
How does that fit into their overall strategy for allocating capital?
Well, share buybacks, those can actually boost shareholder value, because when a company buys back its own shares, it reduces the number of outstanding shares, which can potentially increase earnings per share.
Okay.
And Abbott has been pretty active in buying back their own stock, which, kind of suggests that they believe their shares are undervalued.
Interesting.
But it's also important to look at the balance between share buybacks and other things they could be spending their money on,
Right?
like research and development or paying down debt.
Yeah, it's all about finding that sweet spot.
Exactly. Got to
Right.
prioritize.
All right, so now it's time to address the elephant in the room. ESG factors and any controversies surrounding the company.
Right, because no company is perfect.
Exactly. Everyone's got their skeletons.
Yeah.
And Abbott's no exception. They've had some legal issues in the past.
Yeah.
Some fines related to their marketing practices.
Uh-huh.
There was that whole baby formula recall and plant shutdown.
Right, that was a big one.
So it's really important for us to look at their track record when it comes to environmental, social, and governance factors.
Absolutely.
Ah.
How seriously do they take these things?
Exactly. So we need to understand how severe those past issues actually were. How did Abbott respond to them? And what steps have they taken to make sure those things don't happen again?
Right. What have they learned from those experiences?
Yeah, because their response to that baby formula recall, that's a big deal.
Huge.
It really shows, how committed they are to being responsible and transparent.
Exactly. Actions speak louder than words.
For sure.
Yeah.
So let's shift gears a bit and talk about the pros and cons of potentially adding Abbott stock to a portfolio. So on the plus side, they've got a really impressive history of success.
Yeah. They've been around forever.
They've got a diverse portfolio, and their financials have been really strong.
And they're a dividend aristocrat.
Right, which is always a good sign.
And don't forget about their innovation, particularly in medical devices.
Yeah, true. They're definitely leading the pack in some areas. But of course, there are some things to be cautious about.
There are.
Like the intense competition they're facing in some of their key markets.
Yeah, that's a factor for sure.
And they do rely quite a bit on acquisitions for growth. And then there are those past ESG controversies that we talked about.
Right. Those can't be ignored.
So investors really need to weigh all of these factors carefully. Yeah?
Yeah.
Think about their risk tolerance and whether this company aligns with their investment goals.
Exactly. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
No. So ultimately, the decision to invest or not, that comes down to each individual circumstances.
And their own research and due diligence.
Right, you got to do your homework.
For sure.
All right, so let's dive into some of those economic factors that are playing a role here.
Oh, okay.
Because the healthcare industry, it's definitely sensitive to what's happening in the economy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And Abbott's a global company.
Right.
So they're exposed to all sorts of macroeconomic trends.
All over the world.
Things like inflation, interest rates, currency fluctuations, changes in healthcare policies. All of that can have a big impact on their bottom line.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious, how are these factors playing out right now for Abbott?
Well, it's a mixed bag, to be honest.
Okay.
But they have been putting some strategies in place to try and adapt to this ever-changing economic landscape.
Like what kind of strategies?
Well, they've been working on optimizing their supply chain, for one thing.
Okay.
They're trying to manage pricing pressures, and they're diversifying their revenue streams across different markets.
So spreading things out a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
That makes sense.
And all that really speaks to their ability to navigate these complex economic challenges. They're pretty resilient.
Yeah, they've been through a lot over the years.
They have, and they're still standing.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I just want to reiterate that our goal here is to give you the knowledge and insights.
Yeah.
You need to make informed investment decisions.
Informed decisions, that's key.
Because investing, it's not a one-size-fits-all thing.
Absolutely not.
It's really about considering your own personal goals,
Yeah.
your risk tolerance, and how well a company's practices align with your values.
Right. You got to feel good about where you're putting your money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so we've covered a ton of ground today, haven't we?
We have.
I mean, we went all the way back to their beginnings.
1888.
Yeah, way back.
We talked about their financial.
Their innovation pipeline.
Those acquisitions.
Even dove into those ESG considerations.
And those economic factors that are impacting their business.
Absolutely. We even talked about their market leadership in diagnostics.
Their dividend policy, share buybacks.
Yep, the whole 9 yards.
And, of course, the big question.
Yeah.
Is ABT a good investment or not?
Right. And I think we've presented, a pretty balanced perspective.
I think so.
Highlighted both their strengths and the challenges they're up against.
For sure.
So as we wrap things up here, it's important to remember that our goal is to give you the information you need.
Yeah.
To make that decision for yourself, is this stock right for me?
Exactly. It's your portfolio. Your decision.
Investing, it's a personal journey.
Right? Absolutely.
And it requires, careful consideration of your own circumstances.
Your risk tolerance.
Yep, your investment goals.
Your values.
Exactly. So if, after all of this, you're feeling intrigued by Abbott Laboratories?
Intrigued enough to consider investing.
Yeah, we always encourage you to go do your own research.
Dig a little deeper.
Maybe talk to a financial advisor if that's something you do.
Good idea.
Because the world of investing, it's always changing, right?
Never a dull moment.
So staying informed and staying engaged is key.
Knowledge is power, my friend.
Especially when it comes to your money.
For sure.
So we hope this deep dive has given you some valuable insights into Abbott Laboratories and that you feel equipped
to make those informed decisions.
About your own investment strategies.
Right.
So before we go, don't forget to check out our YouTube channel.
Oh, yeah. We got tons of great content over there.
Yeah, we're doing in-depth stock analyses, deep dives on all sorts of companies across different industries.
Always looking for new companies to explore.
Exactly. So let us know what you think about Abbott Laboratories.
Down in the comments.
And tell us what other stocks you'd like us to cover in future episodes.
We love hearing from you guys.
Yeah, your feedback is super valuable. So until next time,
Happy investing, everyone.
take care.